Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on my channel, and today we're talking about James and Meitalia. I knew it. I think we all had kind of an idea after watching last episode that of all the new couples this season, this was probably going to be the most juicy and dramatic one. Because we're not even 2 full episodes into the season, and already we have some pretty dramatic fights and a lot of toxicity. Oh, and Editor James here. We get real deep in this episode, so if you're into that kind of thing, all the psychology, then definitely stay tuned. So let's talk about it. We catch up with James and Meitalia on their car ride to the airport, where they're about to drop Meitalia off so she can go back to Indonesia without James. And this is naturally a pretty somber car ride to the airport. Neither of them are in the best mood. They're both feeling a little down and depressed about the whole thing.
They also said that leaving James and Jojo behind.
It's also a little bit more tough on Meitalia because she just found out the night before that her dog Jojo, whom she thought was going with her to Indonesia, actually can't and has to stay back in the US.
James just told me that he cannot come to Indonesia right away.
A little piece of information that James knew this whole time, but waited until the last possible moment to tell Tatta about. And it's a little extra sad because Tatta apparently couldn't even say goodbye to James's family because their plan this whole time was to not tell James's family until the last minute.
Then it's really sad that I'm not able to see his family to just say goodbye.
So Tatta's going back home to Indonesia without James, without her dog, and without even telling her host family effectively that she's leaving. That sucks, and both of those pieces of information will become relevant. They're talking about their plan, how James is going to meet back up with her in Indonesia in 4 to 6 weeks, and plans to work as much as he can in the meantime to save up as much money as he can before the move. And then they talk about their financial plan while they're in Indonesia. And that is where we get their first fight of the season, and it's pretty bad. James says that it's his plan to work as much as he can here in America while he has that time, and then when he gets over to Indonesia, the two of them are going to work for Tatta's family at a banana plantation.
I'm going to be just working as much as I can while I'm here, and then I'm going to try to work for your family.
And it's James's assumption that while they work for their family will then pay them, because they're working for them. But although that seems like a reasonable assumption to make, Tatta clarifies that no, they're not actually going to pay us. They wouldn't pay family for working for them.
That's the thing. If you work with my family, they won't pay you. They never pay for a family.
James hears that and is like, what? What do you mean they're not paying us? I thought the whole plan is that we were going to Indonesia and being broke, but we'd be able to work for your parents and then they'd pay us. Like that was our whole plan. What are you talking about? They're not going to pay us.
Well, then what are we going to do for a job? Because you said it was going to be a job, and why did we make that our plan that we were going to do that as a job?
Yeah, this seems like something that they maybe should have communicated a little bit more clearly beforehand. And while this miscommunication has resulted in some butting heads so far, this is where it takes a bit of a darker turn, and James and Tatta both get a lot more mad with each other.
If we can't go there and have any type of a life, why would we do this? I'm not going to move somewhere if I can't take care of you.
I can understand the anger, being told on their ride to the airport last minute that the financial plan that you've been worried about and stressed about may not be actually what you think it is. And you may be going to Indonesia in 6 weeks without a job and your whole plan of the future might be kind of crumbling. I get that. I still think it maybe was a little bit more on him too to ask some of these questions. Like what, you're going to hear, oh, we're going to work for my family on the plantation, and you don't ask any more questions or details. Yeah, maybe Tatta didn't explain this the right way, but kind of feel like there's a bit of responsibility on James too to ask some of these questions so that they can both really be on the same page, But just shelving that for now, listening to how James responds here, the tone he's using, his facial expression, there's a certain intensity and a bitingness and an anger that is kind of disturbing to me. The actual words he said seems, fine enough, but there's something in his face and his expression, there's something there. At least that's how I feel. Tatta then clarifies that although her parents won't pay her, they will take some of the banana chips that they make, go to another city and sell it there.
We can just, and then we go to another city and sell it there.
We're buying the chips from him, and then we're selling them ourselves. Commission.
Exactly.
James seems to accept that explanation, but then goes on to tell Tatta that, okay, well, if we're going to be merchants in another city, then you should have just said that. Why'd you say that we're not going to get paid from the family? When Tatta interrupts and gets defensive and is like, hey, I'm sorry I didn't communicate everything correctly. The English is my third language, dude. Sorry we miscommunicated.
Well, that's what you should have said. But to say that, you're not going to make any money.
It's my third language. I need to translate it. 2 languages in my brain.
As a viewer, I'm still not entirely sure what their agreed upon plan was, and did one person mishear, or did she misspeak, or did they both just make assumptions? Not really clear to me. But what is clear to me from this interaction is they're definitely not talking about this in the most healthy, functional way. James then asks how long would we expect to have to work until we can start turning a profit there.
So how long do you think it'll take us before we make any type of money?
Tatta explains that she doesn't know, that it's a pretty competitive market over there and we're gonna have to fight tooth and nail to get ourselves established. And James gets more upset about how this idea of theirs may not be exactly as set in stone as he thought it was.
You're making it sound like it's not going to be profitable. Yes or no? Are we going to make money or not? Yes or no?
Yes, we can.
Again, I understand James's anger. I can understand his frustration and why he may even blame Tatta right now, thinking that, okay, we had all this plan and the finances and it's kind of your fault for not being clear about this or misleading me. I can understand the frustration from James, but there's just something about the tone and just the way he's talking again that feels almost indicative that there may be a kind of deeper well of anger or possible resentment coming out right now.
If we can't go there and have any type of a life, yes or no? Are we going to make money or not? Yes or no?
And as far as Tatta's concerned, miscommunications aside, it is still telling to see that her reaction to a lot of this confrontation is to really revert into a very childish way of responding. Just shutting down and kind of being unfair and plugging her ears and going, fine, yes, we can, It's kind of a bratty kind of way of handling it. But trust me, we're just scratching the surface here. It's gonna become more clear later. After their little fight, James then kind of complains that he would rather not have had this angry conversation on their way to the airport, and communicates that in kind of a passive-aggressive way.
I hate that we're having this conversation right here, right now.
When Tatta responds by saying, well, yeah, do you think I liked hearing you tell me last night that my dog couldn't come? Yeah, it really sucks having last-minute conversations right before you leave, huh?
Right here, right now.
Do you think I'm not hate to have a conversation last minute about Jojo?
Yeah, totally agree with Tatta here. And I wouldn't be surprised if that wasn't just something she said to make him feel bad right now, kind of get back at him, but if she may be harboring some resentment and anger towards him still from last night. So already some signs that there might be some resentments that may go both ways here. They continue their drive to the airport, and to Tatta's credit, we do hear her in a 101 realize that because she grew up with her dad and working on that plantation, that she could have made some assumptions about what James knew, and later realizes that, okay, maybe I wasn't as clear about this as I maybe should have been. Maybe I made some assumptions.
I don't realize if I need to share the detail to James about what we do.
So good on her for recognizing that. But she does draw the distinction that, okay, maybe I just thought that James knew some stuff and I wasn't as clear, by accident, but James not telling me about the dog till last minute, that was deliberate. At least I didn't deliberately try to mislead and withhold information like James did. They arrive at the airport, they're in the parking garage. James shares his concern about this whole situation and tells her that he's a little more worried about this whole thing now after this financial revelation, which may have triggered Tatta's abandonment insecurities a little bit, as she then asks James if he is still planning on coming at all.
Now I have a lot more concern about all this.
So now you're not gonna move?
I didn't say that.
I don't know, it sounds like you're not.
And while Tatta still sounds kind of bratty right now, and she's looking away, so you're not gonna come at all? Sounds like you don't want to. That's a pretty annoying attitude to have to deal with, and if you hear someone with that kind of attitude, you just shut up, But as frustrating as it is, I'm guessing that although she seems cold and standoffish and angry right now, I'm guessing she's probably pretty scared and hurt. and is thinking like, oh no, I was already scared about James and now he is a little bit more mad. What if this pushes him over the edge? Is he now not gonna come? I think she's scared. Doesn't excuse the behavior, or her attitude. I'm just trying to explain, what I think and what's on my mind. Tatta's fed up, says, whatever, I need to go, and tries to leave when James stops her from leaving and says,
Whatever, I need to go.
But what do I always say? No matter how mad you get, speak in love. Because at the end of the day, we're still...
Love, 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 love. Is that what you want?
I know that must be really frustrating in the moment, but it's pretty funny to watch. Again, Tatta's acting like a child right now. It's pretty immature all around. Pretty bratty, pretty annoying, but it also was interesting to me that James says, hey, when you're angry, we still talk with love, but doesn't sound like there's any love inside him when he says it.
No matter how mad you get, speak in love. Because at the end of the day, we're...
He's telling her, hey, I know you're upset, but we still gotta speak nicely to each other. But he's saying it like, hey, even when we're mad, remember to be nice. Like, it doesn't... You gotta practice what you preach, I don't know. There's also kind of a difference of level, like she's under functioning a bit and being like a child and that kind of way of talking. Remember what I always say, this is how we talk like grown-ups do. It can feel a little bit like he's trying to be the adult and talking down to her a little bit. Tatta then tells us in a one-on-one that she's got a lot of reasons to be mad at James right now. He didn't tell me about the dog until the last minute. He may not even like to have kids like we planned. He hasn't told his family about this whole thing. Like, there's a lot that James doesn't seem to be being completely honest about, and it's starting to worry Tatta. Then, once we're in the airport, we get the sad goodbye scene where they're both saying goodbye and they're hugging and they're crying and, they both miss each other and... Yeah, these scenes, they just suck. If you've ever said goodbye to someone at an airport, that sucks. And while I thought that would be the end of their scene, we actually get a little bit more as we hear from James describe how he feels that Tatta's now gone. And while we may have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because of course at the airport crying, you're very emotional, you may say stuff that you don't necessarily mean or believe. But with that said, he does say something that's pretty interesting. He says he's sad, he feels devastated, and then says, without her, I don't really know who I am.
I just feel devastated right now. And without her, I don't really know who I am.
Says we were born across the world, but we were made for each other, we were perfect for each other, and when you finally find that desperate thing and you have to watch it leave, he is very scared.
When you find that, having to watch it leave, I just feel scared.
Again, he's at the airport. Maybe he would not agree with these statements and he was just caught up in the emotion of it all. But without her, I don't know who I am. And now that she's gone, I feel scared. I don't know about James personally, but if I had to say goodbye to my partner, and I have before, at the airport and all that, I can't imagine myself saying that I'm afraid that they're gone, I'd say that I'm sad, that I'm gonna miss them, that I would prefer if they were here, maybe I'm gonna be lonely, but to be afraid that they're not here because without my partner, I don't know who I am, that suggests to me a level of dependence and they can solve my problems and they're filling a void and maybe I don't really have myself really figured out and they're the key to my happiness. You know what I mean? That's kind of a dependency kind of thing. But that's not all, because before the episode ends, we do get one more scene with just James in it, and I think it answers a lot of questions that people had in my last video who felt that something was off with James and didn't like his dishonesty. This scene takes place a whole month after the conclusion of their last scene together, where James is now back in Maine, has been working a lot, and is moving to Indonesia in 1 week. And that's when James reveals to us that although he's moving to Indonesia in a week now, he still hasn't told his family about it.
I really been dragging my feet by telling my family, and I didn't know when was the right time to tell them. And then eventually took too long, and now last minute.
He's moving across the world, and his family, who he works for, remember, still doesn't know about it.
It's like, should have told them.
Yeah, you should have told them. Why haven't you told them soon? In a week? It's customary to give a 2-week notice to normal employers, let alone your family. He's been talking about the burden that it's gonna put on his family with him leaving the family business this whole time. Like, that could have been partially avoided if you gave them enough lead time so they could find a replacement, you know? I don't understand this at all. I don't know why you wouldn't have told them by now. But it does start to make sense then when James reveals that this isn't the first time he's done this.
This will be the second time I've done something like this.
We then learn that he's actually been married before, and when that partner was living with him in Maine, she too got sick of the cold and decided to move to Florida. But at least the way James described the situation, this ex-wife of his pretty much demanded and declared that she was going to Florida and said that, James, you can either join me here in Florida or we're breaking up.
I actually said I didn't want to go, but at that point, she made it very clear that she was going to go with or without me.
James, then feeling pressured and wanting the relationship to work out, agreed kinda sorta against his will to go to Florida to make his ex-wife happy, but despite his efforts, the marriage didn't work out, and they divorced less than a year after they first got married.
I felt guilty for leaving everybody else behind, and we were married for less than a year.
A pattern is starting to emerge here. And wait a minute, he already did this once before, knew how much damage it caused his company, his family's company.
When I left, my family had to downsize the entire company. There was not enough mechanics to do all the work.
And still, the second time, he still didn't give them a lead notice? Like, dude, you know what's gonna happen. You know this is gonna, why wouldn't, anyway, I gotta get over this. So, James has decided that he will tell his parents, but before he tells them, he invites his little brother and his wife over to tell them first.
So how you been? Holding out? Being alone in this place?
Hanging in there. It's tough. It's tough.
When is she coming back?
And then James tells them the news, that Tatta actually isn't coming back to the US, that I am going over there instead, and I am also not going back to the US.
So when are you coming back?
We're not coming back.
You're not coming back. Okay.
Like-
what do you mean you're not coming back?
And understandably, they are shocked.
Yeah, well, that sucks.
The little brother then points out, hey, isn't this the second time you did this? You know, you kind of left us high and dry last time when you went to Florida. When James says, no, I know what you're thinking. I know they look similar. But that situation with my ex-wife, you know, that's completely different. You know, totally different scenarios. The little brother's like, how is this any different?
Last time going to Florida, you did it for the other person. This time, going to Indonesia, you're doing it for her.
And James says that with his ex-wife, he was forced to and didn't really have any decision in it. Whereas now with Tatta, he does get to have a say in it and is choosing to go to demonstrate his love and dedication to her.
With this, out of love, I was willing to do it for her.
Which, I guess in the first scenario, if you were really told, hey, we're going or we're breaking up, then I understand how you could say that you were kind of forced. You know, I get that. But to say now that he's going to Indonesia to prove his love and dedication, yeah, I guess that's a choice, but it still kind of seems in both scenarios you're doing something that you wouldn't otherwise do by putting the relationship above yourself. You know what I mean?
I'm just trying to show her that I'm willing to do anything for her out of love for her.
But in his defense, I mean, you could just make a sacrifice and recognize the relationship is important. I'd rather be in Maine, but I'm willing to compromise and go to Indonesia. You can still say that, but the fact that that's the first explanation, just coupled with everything else, it does just kind of feel, it maybe, you know, does James really know himself? Is he framing this whole thing as a choice now in comparison to his ex-wife, but could look back at this 10 years later and feel like he was again kind of forced? Because yeah, maybe Tatta isn't saying we're gonna move or else we're gonna break up, but fate is kind of forcing his hand. And I could imagine years later, if the two of them don't work out, he could look back on this and think, again, I moved away even though I didn't want to. I didn't want to move away, but I kind of had to, and it was either me or the relationship, and I chose the relationship again, and you know, damn it, I regret it. I don't know about that's the case with him, but you can kind of see that developing, right? The little brother goes on to ask James how he plans on adapting to the culture and adjusting to the new country, and that's when James reveals to us that when he got married to Tatta, Tatta's father had 3 stipulations for James to be allowed to marry Tatta. So, what are those 3 conditions, you ask? The first stipulation is that James was supposed to learn their native language.
And how are you doing?
I can ask where is something, but that's everything I got.
The second stipulation is that James would always provide for Tatta, which, that's been covered a little bit in this episode already. And the third stipulation is that he and Tatta would eventually have kids.
And the third one was to make sure that they had grandbabies.
So, now that that's been brought up, does James actually want kids? And to that, James says this.
Because I don't really want to have kids. Not right now, not with the state of the world and everything. I mean, it terrifies me of what you'd be bringing a child into.
He doesn't want to have kids because he's worried about the state of the world. So with the 3 stipulations, he said he would learn the language and then didn't. He said he'd provide for her, and I guess he's trying his best. And he agreed to have kids, which he now has changed his mind on. Seems like this guy has an issue with follow through and committing to what he says he'll do. He goes on to explain that he was initially on board with kids until COVID happened, when he thought a lot of coldness and bitterness was revealed in the world that turned him off of the whole idea.
That was 5 years ago, and the world was a different place. After COVID hit, that changed my views on a lot of things in the world. There was quite a coldness, and there was a lot of hate.
While I can understand your opinions on having kids changing as you grow up, and you're allowed to change your opinion on things like that, that's okay. But if your conclusion from all that is the world is too nasty of a place to bring a kid in, I don't know. I would want to ask him what exactly he means by that. Does he mean TikTok is crazy and social media? You bring a kid in and they're just all going to be really depressed and, it's a bad time for them. Okay, I get that. I mean, I don't know what the alternative is. Or is it some kind of one of those like death to humanity thinkings where, humans are just a plague on the world and we're all so evil and we're destroying the world and nature and all that it's our ethical duty to end humanity and stop procreation. There are those people out there. Again, I don't know if that's what James is saying here, but I am curious. I do want to ask him. And I do kind of wonder if he was the latter, one of those kind of people. I feel like that somehow might sort of match some of the anger and resentments that we saw from him in the car earlier when he was talking to Tatta. Because yes, I can understand the anger and he can even be justified in all of these feelings, but there was just something in his eyes in the car ride and just then when he was explaining not wanting to bring a kid into this world that just felt a little off to me. And it kind of reminds me of a kind of sort of incel-y vibe, not of the hatred of women or that kind of thing, but of resentment towards the world, towards being itself, towards society, to the population. Just that sort of anger and bitterness that might result in someone thinking that humans should just stop procreating. Editor James here. Man, I really go on a rant here, so I know it's already rambling already, but if you like it, then just get ready. I know this guy that's had a similar kind of thing with James where he refused to tell anybody the truth about anything that was going on until either the last minute or never at all. The kind of guy that would make plans with you to hang out and then just not show up at all and then not even talk to you for like a week later and then be like, oh yeah, sorry, this like thing came up. It's like, okay, why did you wait a whole week and not even tell me when you didn't show up? Like you just left me high and dry. This is the kind of guy. That guy was so bad that I believe it was a baby shower or a wedding or something of one of his best friends. And for some reason, he missed his flight to go over there. And because of that, he just never showed up and never told anyone. One of the biggest moments in one of his best friends' lives, and he just no-showed. And everyone was wondering, where is this guy? Has anyone heard from him? Nope, didn't tell anybody. At least with this guy I know in real life, a lot of it's felt like he just has so much shame about himself and who he is as a person that's having to confront with a friend and say, hey, I did this bad thing. I missed my flight. I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm running late. It triggers so much of that shame in him that he can't even touch it. He can't even go there. Again, this is total speculation. I'm just making connections. I have no idea what's going on with James actually or if any of this is even real. But not only does he not tell Tatta about the dog, not tell her about not wanting kids, not tell his family about leaving the business and leaving the whole country, he has also said multiple times in very serious ways in these one-on-ones how devastating he knows this information will be to his family and the family business.
It's going to cause a big burden on everyone else. They're going to feel really let down that I abandoned them. I felt guilty for leaving everybody else behind.
Why not tell anybody? Is it similar to this guy I know in real life, where maybe there's a lot of shame and guilt inside of him that would be being triggered and he just can't even open that bag of worms? Does he also have a lot of abandonment fears and fears that disappointing his family again will excommunicate him from the family, or telling anything to Tatta that she may not like? Is she then going to break up with, does he have the abandonment fear? And why did he say that he's afraid of Tatta leaving and he feels like without her, he doesn't know who he is? Lots of questions I have right now, and lots of content all providing and pointing in different directions and things to speculate on, which is a perfect couple to me. I really enjoy watching them as a couple. I think it's very interesting, their dynamic, and I would like to understand more and better what exactly is going on with them and what their motivations or problems may be as individuals. Oh, and I guess the scene isn't technically over. The little brother and the wife then bring up, like, you haven't told her about not wanting kids, that's kind of a big deal. And James excuses it all by saying, there was a lot going on and this whole trip. And why would I bring up not wanting kids when we have so much going on? Which, yeah, okay, fair point, but COVID was in 2020. You've been together for 5 years. And it seems like you had a little bit more time to tell her in this whole experience. And yet, again, you were waiting until the last minute. Not a good sign. The friends tell him that this is kind of a stupid idea. What if you go all the way to Indonesia and make everything work just for her to find out that you don't want kids, and that's what breaks off the relationship? Then you lost the relationship and now you're overseas. That doesn't seem smart. And James ends the episode by telling us in a one-on-one that, he's pretty scared, doesn't know how he's going to tell Tatta, and how this might even ruin their entire relationship.
If I say I don't want to have children, that could cause the biggest rift that could possibly break us apart.
Which, it definitely could. Even if this not wanting kids business doesn't ruin the relationship, this attitude of his where he thinks he can play judge, jury, and executioner and make all these decisions about who he can tell, what he should tell, when he should tell the truth, that's not going to work. That's going to rub people the wrong way. People are going to feel left out. You can't make all these decisions on your own. And as a final warning against this kind of behavior, I will share that this guy I know in real life that has these patterns similar to James's, well, what do you think happens when you don't show up to your friends' big occasions in life and don't tell them about it? What do you think happens when you routinely don't tell the truth, no show to all the occasions, and don't talk to anybody about these problems? You're going to end up with a lot fewer friends, and you're probably going to be a lot more lonely in your life. Well, that's all I got for today's video. Let me know what you thought about James and Meitalia in the comments down below. Very interested in hearing all of your opinions. Big thank you to all of you channel members for helping support this channel and keeping the channel growing, with an extra special thank you to Nancy Jones for being a producer of this channel. And until next time, I'll see you later.